These are the documents you requested.
Thank you, sister. Let us review them.
We must ensure everything is in order.
This one is settled. The land goes to the family, not to any woman.
My father signed that title to me. His signature is on that paper.
Your father was sick when he signed it. A sick man does not know what he signs.
He was sick. But he was not foolish.
Take the cursed land then. Take it and see what it does to you. Every person who has touched that ground has suffered.
Then I will be the first one it does not touch.
The day they buried her father, Blessing already knew something was wrong. She had felt it in the way her Uncle Emeka moved through the compound, too quickly, too purposefully, greeting people with a smile that did not reach his eyes. She had felt it in the way her stepmother Ada barely cried, dabbing a dry face with a handkerchief that came away clean. She had felt it in the silence of Chief Okonkwo, her father's eldest brother, who sat in the corner watching everything with the calm expression of a man who already knew how the story ended. Blessing pushed the feeling down. She told herself it was grief making her suspicious. She told herself these people loved her father. She told herself that whatever came next, family would hold together. She was wrong about all of it. 3 days after the burial, they called a meeting. Blessing arrived, dressed in her mourning black, eyes still swollen, heart still raw. She sat at that table expecting condolences. What she received instead was a document already signed, already stamped, already filed, transferring her father's properties, his Enugu house, his Port Harcourt shop, his savings account, everything he had built over 40 years into a family trust controlled by Emeka and Chief Okonkwo. Her name was nowhere on it. She stared at the paper for a long time. Then she looked up at the faces around the table. Emeka, leaning back in his chair with the ease of a man who had already won. Ada, her stepmother, examining her fingernails with magnificent indifference. Chief Okonkwo, watching Blessing with something that looked almost like pity, but was really closer to satisfaction. She asked about the land. The 3-acre plot at the edge of the village, the one her father had always kept separate, the one he had taken her to see as a child and told her quietly, firmly that it belonged to her. The laughter started before she finished speaking. That land, they told her, was cursed. Everyone in the village knew it. 3 families had tried to farm it and failed. A man had built a house on one corner and lost his business within a year. Her father himself had never developed it, had left it sitting empty for decades because no one with sense went near it. They were doing her a favor, they said, by letting her have it. Everything else was already handled. The cursed land was all she was getting. Her inheritance, her portion, her punishment for being a daughter instead of a son. Blessing took the title document they slid across the table. She folded it carefully, placed it inside her dress, against her beat heart, close to her heartbeat, and she walked out of that compound without another word. She cried in her car. She cried the entire journey. Drove back to Enugu. She cried in her apartment alone, surrounded by the small pieces of a life her father had worked himself into the ground to give her. She cried because she had loved him completely and trusted that love to protect her. She cried because it hadn't. Then she stopped. She stopped because she remembered something. An afternoon, 5 years before his illness took hold, when her father had driven her to that land himself. He had stood at its edge in his old work clothes, looking at it the way a man looks at something he has kept secret for a long time. He had said to her, quietly, "Blessing, this land is not cursed. It is protected. There is a difference. Remember that." She had not understood it then. She understood it now. She hired a surveyor, a quiet man from Abuja, someone with no connection to the village, no loyalty to any name there. She told him she wanted a full assessment, soil, subsoil, everything. She told him to be thorough and discreet. She paid from the last of her savings and waited. The report came back 3 weeks later. She read it twice. Then she sat very still for a very long time. The land her family had called cost for 30 years was sitting on one of the richest clay deposits in the entire region. The kind of clay used in industrial ceramics manufacturing, the kind of clay international companies paid serious money to access. Beneath that, the surveyor had flagged something else, a natural spring, clean and consistent, the kind that could supply a bottling operation or commercial farmland for decades without breaking. The land was not cursed. The land was a gold mine, and somebody had always known. She began to pull the thread. Carefully, quietly, from her apartment in Enugu, she traced back 30 years of that land's history. She found the original survey, commissioned not by her father, but by Chief Okonkwo, filed privately in 1994, never shared with anyone. She found correspondence between Okonkwo and 2 foreign companies, letters exploring an acquisition deal, a deal that had stalled only because her father had refused to sell. She found the moment the family decided the easiest solution was to make the land radioactive, to wrap it in superstition, in rumor, in the language of curses and suffering, so that no one would want it, especially not a daughter who might develop it and discover what it was worth. They had stolen everything else from her father's estate, but they handed her the one thing they could not afford for her to have because they never imagined she would be brave enough or foolish enough to take it. Blessing moved back to the village. She built a small structure on the land herself with workers she brought from outside, and she lived there while the assessments and negotiations ran. The village watched her. People whispered. Some pitied her openly, the daughter who took the cursed ground and built a house on her own suffering. She let them whisper. She smiled at the right people. She said nothing. The deal she signed 18 months later was worth more than everything in that family trust combined. She did not announce it. She did not celebrate publicly. She simply began to build a processing facility on the eastern edge of the land, a partnership with a Lagos-based manufacturing company, a water extraction arrangement that brought in a second income stream before the first one had fully opened. She hired people from the village, not out of sentiment, but out of strategy. She wanted witnesses who lived there, who saw everything, who could not pretend later that they had not. The news traveled the way news always travels in small places. Slowly at first, then all at once. Emeka heard it from his wife, who heard it from a woman at the market, who had seen the trucks arriving at Blessing's land for 3 weeks running. He did not believe it. He drove there himself on a Tuesday afternoon and stood at the gate of what had become a fully operational facility, watching workers move with purpose across ground he had laughed at 18 months before. He stood there for a long time. Then he drove home and did not speak to his wife for 2 days. Ada, the stepmother, heard it at church. The woman who told her Blessing's compound in detail, the new house, the booming business, the rust of local workers and their gratitude. She was paired for prayers and spent her time in a faint of anger, like she had ingested a small amount of poison. The building, the equipment, the staff. Ada sat through the rest of the service without hearing a single word of it. She went home and counted what was left in the family trust. She counted it twice. It was not enough. Chief Okonkwo heard it last. He heard it from his own son, who had tried to get a job at Blessing's facility and been quietly, politely turned away. The old chief sat with that information for a week. He was not a man who showed emotion easily, but something shifted in him during that week. Something in the way he held himself, the way he moved through his own house, the way he looked at the framed photograph of his brother, Blessing's father, that had always hung in his sitting room. He stopped being able to look at it directly. They came to her separately. That was the thing she had not expected, that pride would not even hold them together at the end. They came one by one, each carrying their own version of humility, each with a story about why what happened had not been entirely their fault. Emeka came first, in the early morning, before the workers arrived. He brought palm wine and a long speech about family unity and the importance of blood. Blessing received him in her sitting room. She offered him water. She listened to everything he said with calm face and quiet hands. When he finished, she thanked him for coming. She told him she bore him no ill will. She told him he hoped he was well. She did not offer him anything else. He left the way men leave when they have not received what they came for, with dignity on the surface and devastation underneath. Ada came with her children, thinking numbers would soften the room. She cried almost immediately, which was remarkable for a woman who had not produced a single tear at her own husband's funeral. She talked about how difficult things had become, about how the shop in Port Harcourt was not performing, about how she had always had a soft place for Blessing even when things were hard between them. Blessing looked at the children, her father's children, her half-siblings, young and innocent and guilty of nothing. She arranged for school fees to be paid, for the children only. She told Ada directly and without cruelty that she would care for the children because they were her father's blood, and that was where her responsibility ended. Ada left with less than she came hoping for and more than she deserved. Chief Okonkwo did not come to the compound. He sent a message through his son asking if she would visit him at his home. She considered it for 3 days. Then she went. He was older than she remembered, smaller. The chieftaincy cap was on the table beside him instead of on his head, and without it, he looks like what he was. An old man who had made a terrible choice a long time ago and had been living inside that choice ever since. He did not make speeches. He looked at her and said simply that her father had been the best man he had ever known, and that he had wronged him, and that he was sorry. She sat with that for a moment. Outside the window, the village was moving through its afternoon. Children running, market women calling, the ordinary world continuing without pause. She told him she accepted his apology. She told him it did not change what had happened. She told him she hoped that in whatever time he had left, he would find some peace. She drove back to her land as the sun went down, the same red earth, the same open sky her father had shown her as a child. She stopped the car at the gate and sat for a moment. Just sat, feeling the weight of everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. Her father had told her this ground was protected. He was right, not by any supernatural force, not by the kind of magic the village had invented to frighten her away. Protected by truth, by patience, by the quiet, unbreakable decision to stay standing when every hand around her had pushed her toward the ground. She got out of the car. She walked to the edge of the land and stood there in the falling light, the same way he had stood there with her all those years ago. She was not cursed. She never had been. She was her father's daughter, and she had brought every single thing home. Was this story worth watching until the end? Drop a comment. Did Blessing do the right thing letting them back in, or should she have closed the gate completely? Tell us what you think. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.